Hello. I'm Madeline Sinclair and my sister ripped open the back of my dress, in public. My parents laughed. Someone filmed it. And that video? It went viral before dessert was served. But that's not the crazy part. The crazy part is what happened after when I stopped staying silent. They didn't see me walk in. Or maybe they did, and just decided not to react. The hostess glanced at the reservation list with a polite confusion that I'd grown used to. She leaned in, hushed, whispering that the family table was full. "You can wait by the bar, ma'am," she said, smiling like she wasn't excluding me. My name wasn't on the list. Not even scribbled in pencil. I nodded and stepped aside, my heels clicking softly against the polished floor of the restaurant. I held my clutch close. I'd chosen the silver dress carefully, modest but elegant, with a quiet shimmer under low light. I hadn't worn it in years. Still had the tag tucked inside, like part of me always expected to return it. I never did. I wanted to look good tonight. Or maybe visible. The room swelled with laughter I didn't belong to. Their joy moved around me, not through me. I spotted my parents first. Dad, in his beige blazer he saves for important dinners, already red-faced with wine. Mom, glowing, all pearls and posture, sitting like she'd rehearsed for a photo shoot. And in the center, Valora. My sister turned 30 that night. But she'd held the center of every room since she was 4. She wore emerald satin. Her lips matched the wine she sipped, rich and attention-grabbing. She saw me. Rolled her eyes. That was our greeting. I found a seat at the edge of the room, near a waiter's station. A young server mistook me for staff and handed me a tray of water glasses. "You're late," he whispered. I didn't correct him. I just handed the tray to another waiter and sat, invisible like I always was. A few guests gave me half smiles, unsure whether to ask who I was or let it go. I sipped my water slowly. My throat was tight, dry. I scanned the tables, no place card with my name. The decor? Familiar. Gold runners, candles in mason jars, baby's breath in vintage vases. I'd emailed the design to Mom months ago, thinking she might use it for her book club. Guess she used it here instead. No credit, no nod. The lights dimmed slightly. The volume dropped to a hush. Valora stood, glass raised. "I want to thank everyone for coming to celebrate this night. I'm 30. She laughed. Applause followed. "And before we move on to the cake, I just want to say, family means everything." My mother clapped first, her bracelets chiming like tiny bells. My father shouted, "That's my girl." Valora walked through the tables, smiling, hugging people, soaking in compliments like perfume. Then she came to me. She bent down and pulled me up from my seat like I was a child being offered a reluctant dance. "You made it," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. She embraced me, tight, too tight. Then her hand slid to the back of my dress. And tore. One fluid motion. One sickening rip. I didn't react immediately. It took a second to register what she'd done. The cool air kissed my back. The fabric sagged around me. She stepped back and looked me up and down. "Cheap dress," she said with a smirk. "Thought you could sneak into a high-end party with that?" The room gasped. A few muffled laughs. My mother laughed. Out loud. Dad laughed too. "She's always had a flair for drama," he said, raising his glass. A phone screen lit up. Someone recorded. I stood still, hands shaking, trying to gather the fabric behind me. My clutch wasn't big enough to cover the rip. My hair did nothing. Valora's smile didn't falter. This wasn't impulsive. It was rehearsed. Calculated. She'd planned the speech. The walk-over. The embrace. The tear. It was theater, and I was the unwitting punchline. I heard whispers. "Who is she?" "Wait, is that?" The server returned, eyes wide, and gently offered me a coat. I nodded, unable to find words. The coat smelled of cedar and cloves. It was too big, but it shielded me. I turned, ready to walk out. Not fast. Not panicked. Just done. Then the doors opened. The restaurant quieted instantly. Even the music faded, as if embarrassed to be playing. Corbin stepped in. My husband didn't rush. He didn't shout. He just walked. Measured. Silent. Every head turned to him, recognizing something about his presence, money, maybe. Power. But more than that, poise. He scanned the room once. Then his eyes landed on me. He stopped. Took in the coat. The tear. My face. I didn't cry. Not yet. But my lower lip trembled. And then, for the first time that night, I saw someone react the way I needed them to. His jaw clenched. His gaze darkened, not with anger, but something colder. He walked to me, slowly. Placed a hand on my back, over the coat. Protective. Steady. "Are you okay?" he whispered, only for me. I didn't answer. Couldn't. He turned to the room. No one spoke. No one moved. That silence was deafening. And in that silence, I finally realized what betrayal sounds like. It sounds like laughter from the ones who should have loved you. This time, I won't be the one who leaves. The lock clicked behind me, but it felt like I was sealing more than just a door. I leaned against the cool tile of the restroom wall, my breath shaky, held tight in my chest like I didn't trust the air in here either. The coat Corbin had draped around my shoulders was too big, too structured, but for the first time in that room, I felt covered. I wasn't shivering from the cold. I was shivering from how easily they laughed at my pain. I looked in the mirror. Not to fix anything, but to see the woman they kept pretending didn't exist. Mascara pulled beneath my eyes. My lipstick had faded during that forced smile earlier. I didn't bother to fix it. I just watched her, me, breathing. Slowly. Quietly. Trying not to unravel. The door opened behind me before I could brace myself. Corbin's reflection filled the doorway. "I knocked," he said gently. "You didn't answer." "I needed a second," I whispered. He stepped inside and closed the door again. "Take as many as you need." I didn't cry. I thought I would. But all I could feel was the hollowness in my throat, like something had been scooped out of me and replaced with static. Corbin walked over slowly, not touching me, just standing near enough to anchor the moment. "They're spinning it already," he said. "Calling it a misunderstanding. A harmless prank." I nodded. "Of course they are." He paused. "Valora told someone it was a joke. That I was supposed to laugh it off with them. Your mother added that I shouldn't make a scene." My laugh wasn't bitter. It was barely even audible. "They've rehearsed this dance for years. Only now the music's different." Corbin's voice lowered. "Do you want me to shut it down?" I met his eyes in the mirror. "Not yet." The hallway outside grew louder again. Someone probably restarted the music. As if tearing open your sister's dress in front of family and guests was just a hiccup in the evening program. We walked out together, but I didn't take his hand. I didn't need to cling to him. I needed to walk on my own. Back at the table, silence fell when we returned. My mother was the first to speak. "Of course. Oh honey, it was just a joke, we didn't know you were coming." Her voice was overly sweet, artificially pitched like the commercials she used to force us to memorize for school plays. Valora chimed in, her tone sing-song and sharp. "We were just teasing. Madeline always takes things so personally." My father shrugged, chuckling like it was all some silly misunderstanding. "You know your sister. Sensitive since birth." That word again. Sensitive. Like it was a flaw. Like it was worse than cruel. I looked at them, all three, Mom, Dad, Valora, sitting there so proud, so unbothered. Their wine glasses half full. Their napkins perfectly folded. "I bled for this family in silence," I said. "And now you call me sensitive because I didn't laugh when you ripped me open?" They blinked. Not a single apology. Not even a flicker of remorse. Corbin's voice broke the moment. "Calm. Cold. Which of you filmed it?" Silence. He turned to his assistant, who was already on her phone. "Find the IP. Flag every post. Contact legal." My mother gasped. "You're not serious." "I am," Corbin said. "Very." Valora tried to smile. "No one meant harm. This is just family. You know how we joke." I turned toward her. My voice was soft, but it didn't need to be loud. "Would you have laughed if it were Valora?" No one answered. "Don't bother," I said. "I already know the answer." A waiter approached me then, awkward and pale. He leaned down and whispered, "Ma'am, the video's already online. It's trending." He held out his phone. I looked. Cheap dress challenge. The title. The angle. My exposed back. The audio looped, Valora's voice saying, "cheap dress" over and over, layered with my mother's laugh. People had added filters. Comments scrolled underneath like flies. "Is she the maid? Why is she dressed like she's crashing her ex's wedding?" Someone get her a real dress. And a spine. My chest tightened. I handed the phone back. A familiar ache rose in me, one that had lived there for decades. It was the ache of being misnamed. Misunderstood. Always misrepresented. Corbin reached for my hand under the table. His touch was steady. I didn't squeeze back, but I didn't pull away either. They watched me, waiting to see if I'd crack. But I didn't. I stood, smoothing the borrowed coat around my shoulders. Excuse me. I walked away, not rushed, not dramatic. Just away. The women's restroom was empty now. I locked the door again and faced the mirror. Same face. Same eyes. Same scar that never healed because no one ever called it a wound. They laughed at my pain, I whispered. But they'll remember this silence. Because I won't give it to them again. I leaned forward, close enough to fog the mirror with my breath. This time, I won't be the one who leaves. The mirror fogged slightly from my breath as I stood there, still in Corbin's blazer, my skin warm against the cold lining. My reflection didn't look broken anymore, just exhausted, scraped clean of illusion. I didn't feel invisible now. I felt inevitable. Outside the restroom, laughter resumed. That particular kind of laughter, forced, overly bright, the sound people make when they want to bury what just happened. I listened to it quietly, my pulse matching the rhythm of the bass coming from the speakers. My phone vibrated on the counter. I glanced down, expecting a message from Corbin, but it wasn't him. It was a comment notification from one of those social apps I never use anymore. A stranger had written, she deserved it. Probably some jealous ex or attention seeker. My throat closed. They didn't even know me, but somehow, their words felt familiar. Because I'd heard versions of them all my life, said by people who smiled when they said them. I tightened my grip on the counter until my knuckles paled. I could still hear Valora's voice looping in my head, sweet and venomous, cheap dress. The phrase clung to me like perfume gone sour. I thought of leaving. Just walking out the back door, disappearing into the parking lot, calling an Uber, pretending this whole evening never happened. But something inside refused to move this time. Maybe exhaustion. Maybe defiance. Maybe both. I took a slow breath. The air carried the faint smell of lilies from the restroom's air freshener. Even that scent reminded me of my mother, how she sprayed our house with floral sprays before guests arrived, trying to cover the smell of tension and resentment that always lingered. When I finally stepped out, the hallway lights felt too bright. Conversations dimmed as I passed, like everyone sensed I wasn't part of their script anymore. I returned toward the dining hall, but paused near the entrance when I overheard a woman whisper to her husband, "It's so sweet of Valora to invite underprivileged women to her parties." Underprivileged. I bit the inside of my cheek until I tasted copper. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to scream. Instead, I stood still, letting the word wash over me. They weren't talking about charity, they were talking about me. The irony was almost poetic. I wasn't the charity case. I'd paid for 2 of Valora's birthdays when I was still in college, working double shifts at a community center. I even recommended this restaurant to Mom a few years ago when she wanted somewhere classy but not pretentious. She never thanked me. Tonight, she told the guests she found it herself. "Our taste has always been refined," she said earlier, her voice dripping pride. The walls glittered with golden streamers, the same design I'd used for Valora's 16th birthday. I still remember cutting those stars out by hand, pricking my fingers until they bled. She told everyone at that party that her best friend designed it. Not me. Never me. That night, she got a car wrapped in a red bow. I got her old bicycle and a reminder to be grateful. The thought made me dizzy. I steadied myself against the doorway, taking in the scene again, the way the chandelier light danced on the glasses, the smell of expensive perfume, the 2 perfect smiles. It was all so rehearsed. And I was done being their background actor. The memory of her 14th birthday came uninvited, but sharp. I was 21 then, working part-time at an art supply store, saving every dollar to surprise her. I spent 2 weeks crafting a DIY backdrop, painting pastel flowers on fabric I couldn't afford. I cut my hand on the wire frame while setting it up. Valora didn't notice. Mom told the guests, Valora planned all of this herself. She's so talented. I stood behind them, holding the cake, blood seeping through my bandage, smiling anyway. That was the first time I realized my name didn't belong in their story. The noise from the present dragged me back. Valora was now parading around with guests, laughing too loud, like nothing had happened. Mom hovered near her, proud and radiant, basking in the attention of having the perfect family. Dad stayed seated, nursing another glass of wine. He'd always been the peacemaker, the man who said, "Let's not ruin the evening," every time cruelty showed up at our dinner table. He never yelled. He just looked away until it was safe to look again. I walked back into the room. No one noticed. Or maybe they did and decided not to acknowledge it. That was always their choice, what to see and what to ignore. Then I caught sight of the birthday cake. Gold frosting, silver sprinkles, tiny lights forming Valora's name. No mention of sisters or family. Just Valora. A monument to her own mythology. I moved toward an empty table, watching them from a distance. For the first time, I wasn't angry. I was studying them. Every gesture. Every false smile. Every act of performance. They had built their kingdom out of omissions, and I had been its quiet foundation. My phone buzzed again. Another notification. This time, it wasn't strangers. It was my coworker Jenna. "Are you okay? Saw the video. That's messed up." I didn't reply. What could I say? Yes, that's my family. The laughter near the cake grew louder. I saw Valora lift a glass, giving yet another toast. "To the people who made me who I am," she said. Everyone clapped. Mom dabbed her eyes. I smiled. Because finally, she wasn't wrong. They had made her who she was, vain, cruel, hungry for applause. Slowly, quietly, I stood up and walked toward the restroom again. The same hallway, the same soft lighting, the same echo of my heels on tile. Inside, the mirror still showed the faint smear from where I'd leaned before. I unbuttoned Corbin's blazer, sliding it off my shoulders. My back still stung where the fabric had torn earlier, a faint red line crossing my skin like a scar waiting to form. I reached into my clutch for my lipstick. The shade was rosewood, the only color I ever wore. I twisted it open and drew a single line down the center of the mirror. One clean stroke. Bold. Defiant. "If I don't exist in their story," I whispered, "I'll write my own." The lipstick gleamed under the fluorescent light, deep and final. I placed it back into my clutch and stood straighter. For the first time in my life, the reflection staring back didn't look like someone trying to belong. It looked like someone about to begin. I turned off the light before leaving. The mirror glowed faintly with that crimson mark, like a seal, like a signature. As I stepped into the hallway again, I felt lighter. The music had shifted to something upbeat, the party in full swing. But somewhere deep inside, something had changed shape. I walked past them quietly, gently, like I was moving through a museum of memories I'd finally stopped curating. I wouldn't vanish quietly. Not this time. I stayed close to the wall as I walked back into the dining room, the hum of conversation thick enough to hide in. The party hadn't slowed. Glasses clinked. Waiters floated through the crowd carrying plates of dessert. The air smelled of champagne and candles, but underneath it all was the same scent I'd known since childhood, pretension and cheap perfume pretending to be grace. I caught sight of my mother near the projector. She was fussing with the remote, saying something to the host. Then the lights dimmed. "Everyone, quiet down," she said proudly. "Valora has something special prepared." The screen behind her flickered to life, showing the first slide, Valora through the years. Each photo was pristine. Her first dance recital. Her high school prom. The award ceremony. Christmas mornings. Dozens of smiles framed in gold borders. The audience laughed softly at baby pictures, clapped when teenage Valora appeared in a tiara. And I wasn't in a single one. I stood there, hands clasped in front of me. My heart didn't race anymore, it simply thudded with a kind of dull familiarity. I organized that tea party, I thought. I sewed that costume. I stayed home to babysit. Why am I not in any of it? It was strange how pain could feel so predictable. Like watching a rerun of a show you once loved and realizing you already knew every cruel twist. A little boy sitting nearby pointed at me, tugging at his mother's sleeve. "Who's the woman in the ugly dress?" Someone shushed him gently, laughing. "Just ignore it." But my mother leaned over to a guest and whispered, "She always dresses so off. Artistic, you know." The guest laughed politely. I looked down at the blazer still draped over my shoulders. It wasn't the dress they found ugly, it was me. They're not ashamed of me, I thought. They enjoy my shame. Valora's voice rang from the front. "Thank you, everyone, for being part of my journey. She spun slowly, making her emerald dress glimmer under the lights. I noticed the stitching along her neckline, the subtle folds near the waist. My chest tightened. That dress. The cut, the seams, it was mine. Flashback. I was 25, sitting at a tiny cafe downtown, sketching designs on napkins between my shifts at the art center. Mom had stopped by, Valora trailing behind. I showed them a sketch of a gown I'd been dreaming about for months. Designers starve, Madeline, my mother said, sipping her latte. You need real work. Valora laughed, taking the napkin from me. You think people would wear this? It's too simple. Now, years later, there it was, my design, perfected in expensive fabric, paraded as her own. I felt heat rise in my chest, but not from anger. It was something quieter, more hollow. Like losing something I never truly owned. A tremor ran through my hand. I reached for a glass of water from the nearest table. The condensation dripped between my fingers. My reflection shimmered faintly in the surface of the glass, blurred, fractured. A familiar voice cut through the noise. Maddie, are you all right? I turned. Eudora. My grandmother stood there, silver hair pinned neatly, her eyes softer than the rest of the room combined. She moved slowly, but with intention, taking my hand in hers. Don't let them steal your voice too, she whispered. Her touch steadied me. I'm fine, I said, but my voice betrayed me. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a lace handkerchief. Here, she said. You've always been the one who holds the truth. That's what they can't stand. Before I could thank her, my mother appeared. Mother, please. Not tonight. Don't stir things. She snatched the handkerchief away, forcing a smile toward the crowd as though nothing happened. Let's all enjoy ourselves, shall we? Eudora sighed, lowering her gaze. I felt her grip weaken slightly, her fingers trembling. Inside, my thoughts churned. They're not afraid of embarrassment. They're afraid of truth being seen through my silence. The screen showed the final image, a photo of Valora in a white sundress, standing on a pier. My father shouted, "To our shining star." Everyone applauded again. I couldn't breathe. It wasn't claustrophobia, it was suffocation by familiarity. The weight of years spent muted. I turned away. The door was only a few steps ahead. My body moved on instinct, desperate to escape before I said something that couldn't be unsaid. My heels clicked against the marble floor, echoing louder than the applause. Madeline. Her voice, Eudora's, caught me mid-step. She was sitting now, her frame small but unyielding. Her eyes met mine with that same clarity that always cut through noise. If you leave now, she said, her voice barely above a whisper, they win. And I lose the only person in this room who still sees me. I froze. Around us, laughter swelled again. The show ended. The lights brightened. People returned to their drinks, their small talk, their pretending. But in that single moment, I saw the entire pattern of my life, the exits I'd taken, the silences I'd swallowed, the way I'd made room for everyone else's comfort while shrinking out of frame. Eudora's hand shook slightly when I reached for it. I covered it with mine. I don't know if I can stay, I admitted quietly. You already have, she said. Just by standing here. I wanted to cry, but the tears wouldn't come. Instead, I inhaled deeply, the air heavy with perfume and pretense. The noise of the crowd faded to a hum. For the first time, I turned around. Valora was basking in praise, arms open, glowing like she'd won something. My mother hovered beside her, eyes glistening with pride, as if this evening proved her parenting was flawless. My father raised his glass again, the eternal cheerleader for comfort over conflict. I didn't step forward. I didn't need to. I met Valora's gaze from across the room. She faltered, just for a second. Something in her smirk slipped. Maybe she saw it, the end of my quiet compliance. I straightened my shoulders, feeling Eudora's fragile hand still resting in mine. I stayed. Not for them. For her. The applause had quieted, but the noise still lived beneath the surface, polite conversation, the hum of people who didn't know what had just cracked open inside the room. I could still feel Eudora's hand resting faintly in mine, her skin paper thin but strong enough to tether me to this moment. When she whispered, "Stay," it wasn't a request. It was a reminder. So I stayed. Valora took the microphone again, her laugh tight, a half second too loud. My family made me who I am, she declared, posing for the cameras someone was still using despite the awkwardness that hung like fog. Her words hit me harder than I expected. Not because they weren't true, but because they were. We had made her. Every sacrifice, every uncredited gesture, every moment of swallowing pride, it had built this creature of self-worship standing under the chandelier. Corbin stood near the back wall, his arms folded, gaze steady. He didn't need to speak to draw attention, his presence always shifted a room's gravity. A murmur rippled through the crowd. A woman behind me whispered to her husband, "Isn't that Corbin Sinclair? The tech investor?" Her husband leaned forward. "The billionaire? What's he doing here?" Before she could answer, another voice cut in. "I heard the woman in the torn dress is her nanny or maybe some charity case." I turned. Their eyes darted away, but the words had already landed. I walked toward the center of the room, heels tapping against marble. My hands didn't shake this time. "Actually," I said clearly, "I'm her sister. And this is my husband." The words carried farther than I thought they would. The air changed, brittle like glass about to break. Corbin didn't move. He didn't need to. His silence said everything. Valora's laugh faltered. "Oh, Maddie, you're so dramatic. Always have been." "It's her thing," she said to the guests, her tone drenched in honey but sharp enough to cut. One of the guests, an older man, one of Corbin's former partners, leaned toward her. "You didn't mention you were related to Madeline Sinclair," he said evenly. Valora froze, smile stiffening. "We don't talk about work at family gatherings," she managed. Corbin stepped forward then, voice calm but laced with precision. "She doesn't," he said, "until she needs funding." A hush spread across the room. The investors, the local press, the friends who only attended for networking, they all looked between us, weighing who was safe to side with. Valora's boyfriend, a man perpetually checking his reflection on his phone screen, tried to salvage the mood. "Okay, everyone," he said, forcing a grin, "let's not make this awkward. It's a party, right?" But even he stopped when Corbin's eyes met his. The silence felt heavier than any outburst could have been. My heart didn't race. It settled. All those years of pretending I didn't exist, and now, they flinch at the sound of my name. Corbin turned to his assistant. "Get the footage. All of it. Secure the original," he said quietly. Valora's boyfriend muttered, "You're not serious," but Corbin didn't acknowledge him. He turned to me, his voice soft, meant only for me. "You don't have to say anything," he murmured. "But if you want to, I'll hold the room for you." I looked at him, grateful but certain. "No," I whispered. "They'll hear me better in silence." Phones buzzed. Heads lowered. Guests began whispering again. "Look online," someone said. "There's another angle." The first video, the one that mocked me, was being drowned out by a second clip, filmed from across the room. This one showed everything, Valora's grin, the deliberate pull, the laughter that followed. Corbin's assistant glanced up from her phone, meeting his eyes with a nod. It was spreading. Truth had entered the algorithm. Valora noticed the shift before anyone said it aloud. She saw the looks changing around her, the subtle steps backward, the way allies evaporated when power moved. "What are you doing?" she whispered, voice shaking just enough to betray her composure. I didn't answer. I simply walked toward her. Each step was measured, the kind of calm that comes after years of humiliation solidify into something stronger than anger. When I stood in front of her, close enough to see the shimmer of sweat forming along her hairline, she tried to smile again. "You're overreacting," she said quietly. "It was just a stupid joke." I leaned in, close enough that only she could hear. "I'm not reacting," I whispered. "I'm remembering." Her eyes widened. For the first time in decades, Valora didn't have a line ready. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I just looked at her until she had to look away. Then I turned, walking back to where Eudora sat near the edge of the room. My grandmother reached for my hand without a word. Behind me, I heard my father's voice. "Enough of this spectacle. We are family, for God's sake." Corbin's reply was low, unshaken. "Family doesn't make a habit of public humiliation." Mom's voice followed, sharp and trembling. "Corbin, please, she's your sister-in-law." "She's a liability," he said simply. "And that's all she's made herself tonight." The weight of that truth settled over the room. Valora's perfect facade cracked, just a hairline fracture, but enough. She turned to me again, desperate now. You think you're better than me because you married well? You wouldn't even be here if not for me. I stopped walking but didn't turn around. Exactly, I said softly. I wouldn't be here if not for you. Gasps rippled through the crowd, but I didn't let them linger in the silence that followed. I kept walking until I reached Eudora's chair, the warmth of her hand steadying mine. In that fragile calm, I felt the moment shift completely. The power that once belonged to my family now belonged to the truth. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need approval. I just needed to exist out loud. I looked back one last time. Valora stood alone in her emerald dress, surrounded by the people she'd spent her life trying to impress, and none of them were looking at her anymore. They were all looking at me. I didn't need the room to know who I was, I thought. I just needed her to see it. The crowd started to scatter, but I stayed still long enough to feel the weight of what had shifted. I could sense Corbin watching me from across the room, his calm holding the chaos together like thread on the verge of snapping. When I finally turned toward Eudora's seat, it was empty. I walked back slowly, scanning the tables, but her chair had been cleared, her plate gone, her coat missing. Panic edged its way up my throat. A waiter passed by, and I caught his sleeve. "Have you seen my grandmother?" I asked. He looked uneasy. "She was escorted out, ma'am. Your mother said she wasn't feeling well." I froze. Not feeling well. That was code in my family for quiet her down. No. They hadn't sent her home because she was tired. They silenced the only voice that had dared to stand beside me. My hand tightened around the glass in front of me. The stem cracked slightly under my grip. I didn't drink. I just stared at the fracture spreading through the crystal, a perfect map of every conversation that had ever broken me. Memories came back sharp and clear. The day Eudora paid my art school tuition, something I'd buried until now. I was 22, desperate, sitting on the floor of my tiny apartment surrounded by unopened bills. My mother had refused to co-sign my loan, saying, "Art isn't a career, Madeline. It's a hobby. You'll thank me when you grow up." I remember her voice perfectly, measured, dismissive, designed to sound logical while slicing me apart. That night, there was a knock on the door. Eudora stood there, wrapped in her long beige coat, smelling faintly of lavender and old books. She handed me an envelope. "You don't need permission to matter," she said simply. That check saved me. Her belief in me saved me. And now, they had taken her voice out of this room the same way they'd taken mine for years. I found Corbin near the bar, his phone in hand, his expression unreadable. "They sent her home," I said. He looked at me for a long moment, then set the phone down. "Then it's time." "Time for what?" He straightened. "To stop pretending this is family." He signaled to the restaurant manager, who hesitated but approached. Within seconds, my parents and Valora were drawn into a small circle near the back of the room. Corbin's tone was controlled but sharp enough to cut through every lie in the air. "There will be no more business ties between my companies and anyone involved here tonight," he said. My mother blinked. "Corbin, that's absurd. You're overreacting. This is family." He met her gaze with ice. "So is my wife. And you laughed when she was bleeding." Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. My father looked down, pretending to read something on his phone. Valora crossed her arms, her nails digging into her own skin. "This is ridiculous," she snapped. "It was one stupid night. Everyone's acting like I committed a crime." Corbin didn't respond. He didn't have to. His silence was louder than any argument. I felt my breath steady. For once, I didn't have to defend myself. Then Valora's voice broke again, cracking under her own performance. "It was just one night. I was jealous, okay? Just once, I wanted to be the favorite." The confession hung in the air like smoke. The guests who had lingered began to shift uncomfortably, pretending to check their phones or finish their drinks. I looked at her, really looked, mascara streaked, voice trembling, the emerald dress now a cage she'd built herself. And in that moment, something inside me softened. She wasn't the villain I expected. She was the consequence of all the love I never got. Mom tried to smooth things over, as always. "Valora, please, don't make this worse. Let's just go." But she didn't move. She dropped to her knees, sobbing, grabbing the hem of my coat. "Maddie, I didn't mean it. You know how Mom is. She always compared us." I stepped back. Her hands slipped from the fabric. The space between us felt final. "I know," I said quietly. That's the problem. The room went still again. Even the music stopped. My mother reached for her purse, muttering something about drama queens. My father whispered, "Let's leave." But Valora stayed kneeling, shaking, undone. I turned away from them all. The restroom was empty when I entered. The silence there was different now, less oppressive, almost forgiving. I faced the mirror, still marked faintly from the line of lipstick I'd drawn earlier. The woman in the reflection looked unrecognizable. I slipped out of the ruined dress, letting it fall to the tile floor. For a moment, I stood there in my slip, breathing, my skin prickling from the change in air. The torn fabric pooled at my feet, silver against the black and white floor like shed skin. I opened my clutch and pulled out the lace handkerchief Eudora had given me before my mother snatched it away. I didn't know how it had found its way back to me, maybe she'd slipped it into my bag before leaving, but it was there, folded neatly, carrying the faint scent of her perfume. I pressed it against my chest. "Thank you," I whispered. I tucked it back into my clutch, then reached for Corbin's blazer hanging on the hook. I slid it over my shoulders. The fabric was heavy but comforting, fitting me in a way the dress never had. When I looked at myself again, there was no tremor in my stance, no hesitation in my gaze. This wasn't exposure anymore. This was reclamation. I gathered the torn dress from the floor and laid it across the counter, not as trash, but as evidence. "Tonight," I said softly, "I take off the version of myself they mocked." I turned toward the door, resting my hand briefly on the cool metal handle. "And I leave her behind." When I stepped out into the hallway again, the air felt different, lighter, cleaner. Somewhere in the distance, I could hear Corbin speaking firmly to the restaurant staff, arranging Eudora's transport home. He looked up when I appeared. His expression softened. "You ready to go?" "Yes," I said. "But not the way we came." He nodded, understanding without question. We walked past the dining room together, the laughter gone, replaced by murmurs. People turned to look but no one spoke. I felt every eye, but none of it touched me anymore. Because the only reflection that mattered was the one I'd just met in that mirror. The restaurant felt hollow after the crowd dispersed. The music had stopped, the waiters whispered among themselves, and half-eaten plates of cake sat abandoned under flickering candlelight. I could still smell the perfume lingering in the air, sweet, artificial, heavy with all the pretense that had kept this family upright for so long. Corbin stood near the entrance, speaking quietly to the manager. "Would you like us to ask everyone to leave?" the man asked him. Corbin nodded once, his tone even but firm. "Yes. All of them." Within minutes, the noise evaporated. Chairs scraped against the floor as guests made their way out, murmuring to one another, unwilling to meet my eyes. They didn't need to. They'd seen enough to understand what this night had become. This was no longer a celebration. It was a reckoning. The room emptied until only family remained, my parents, Valora, Corbin, and me. The chandeliers hummed faintly overhead, the sound of electricity filling the silence. I stood still, breathing slowly, gently, trying to find steadiness in the middle of the ruin. Valora looked small without her audience. Her makeup had smudged, and her emerald dress had lost its shine under the harsh light. When she spoke, her voice trembled with something that almost resembled humility. "Don't let him ruin me," she whispered, stepping closer. "You know what this will do. I'll lose everything." I didn't step back, but I didn't reach for her either. My voice came out calm, quiet enough that she had to lean in to hear. "That was always your mistake, Valora. You thought hurting me cost nothing." She blinked fast, eyes glossy, as if she couldn't understand that I wasn't shouting. I wasn't angry. I was finished. Corbin joined us, his presence steady, unflinching. "Enough," he said simply. He looked at her, at my parents, at the restaurant manager hovering nearby. "As of now, every account, contract, and vendor relationship connected to my companies and your name is severed." My mother gasped. "Corbin, please. She's your sister-in-law." My father stepped forward, his face red. "This is family. You're choosing her over blood." Corbin turned his gaze on him, voice low and clear. "I'm choosing someone who knows what love without cruelty looks like." Silence followed. My mother began to cry softly, not out of guilt, but out of fear. The kind that comes when power slips through fingers that once held it tightly. "We were just trying to celebrate her," she said through her tears. "We didn't mean to hurt anyone." I looked at her, and for the first time, I didn't flinch. You always meant to protect her. And ignore me. She stared at me as though hearing those words from my mouth were more offensive than all the things she'd done. Billionaire dropped her gaze, whispering, "You're both overreacting." But her hands shook. Her fingers picked at the sequins on her dress, pulling one loose, letting it fall to the floor. It glinted under the light like a tear she'd never shed. Then she broke. "It was just one night," she cried. "I was jealous, okay? Just once, I wanted to be the favorite." Her voice cracked. My father moved as if to help her, but Corbin held up a hand to stop him. "Let her finish," he said softly. Billionaire's sobs echoed in the empty hall, ugly and raw. "You don't know what it's like," she said, looking at me through mascara streaks. "Mom always told me I was special, that I had to shine. You were the example. The one who always got things right, who made me feel small. I hated it." I took a slow breath. "You didn't hate me, Billionaire. You hated that I didn't fight back. You mistook my silence for weakness." Her head dropped into her hands. "I just wanted to feel seen." I almost pitied her. Almost. Because I understood the ache behind her words. But I also knew the difference between wanting love and destroying others to feel powerful. This wasn't revenge, I thought. It was release. My mother moved closer to Corbin. "Please," she said softly, "don't do this. Think about the family. Think about appearances." He didn't even turn his head. "I have," he said. "And I've decided I'm done thinking about appearances." He walked to the table, took his phone, and made a single call. His tone was professional, detached. "Freeze all open contracts with the Sinclair family. Effective immediately." The finality of it landed like thunder. Billionaire looked up, her expression hollow. "You're ruining us." I met her eyes. "No. You did that yourself." The silence stretched so long that even breathing felt intrusive. My father slumped into a chair, staring at the untouched wine glass in front of him. He looked smaller than I'd ever seen him. My mother stood behind him, hands clasped tightly, whispering prayers she'd never meant before. I didn't feel triumphant. There was no victory here, just the end of a long, tired war. Corbin turned to me then, softer now. "Are you ready to go?" "Almost," I said. He reached into his jacket pocket. "Before we leave, there's something you should see." He pulled out a small envelope, creased at the edges. "Your grandmother gave this to me before she left." My chest tightened. "She gave you something?" He nodded. "Said it was for you," when the noise settled. I took it with both hands. My fingers trembled slightly as I opened the flap. Inside was a single sheet of paper, her handwriting delicate and deliberate. "Madeline, the legacy of this family is not what they left behind. It's what you choose to carry forward. Choose peace. E." The words blurred as tears filled my eyes, not the sharp, aching kind, but the quiet ones that cleanse. Corbin rested a hand on my shoulder, not to comfort but to stand beside me. "She saw this coming," he said softly. "I know." My voice came out fragile but sure. "And she trusted me to end it." I folded the letter carefully, sliding it back into the envelope. My mother was still crying softly behind us. Billionaire was still kneeling. My father still silent. I turned once more to the room that had defined so much of my life. The table where we'd eaten, laughed, pretended. The lights still glittered overhead, reflecting off glasses half full of lies. I walked to the nearest one and gently tipped it over. Wine spilled across the tablecloth, spreading in slow crimson waves. It looked almost like the lipstick line I'd left on the mirror earlier. That night, I whispered, I chose peace. But not silence. Corbin reached for my hand, and together we walked toward the exit, leaving behind the family that had mistaken cruelty for tradition. Outside, the night air was cold, but it felt new, like breath after a long-held pause. The rain had been steady all night, and by morning, it softened into a quiet percussion on the window panes. I woke before the light fully touched the room. The silence in our house wasn't cold, it was sacred, like a cathedral I'd built from everything I'd survived. I didn't reach for my phone right away. I sat there for a few long minutes, watching the sky lighten through sheer curtains, listening to nothing but the sound of water meeting glass. It was the first morning in years where I didn't brace for impact before opening my eyes. Eventually, I turned over and picked up my phone. 200 notifications. Maybe more. The video was everywhere. So were the articles. The public apologies. The "we didn't know" statements. A few from former classmates, some from distant cousins who hadn't spoken to me since my wedding. And one from my mother. Just a thumbs up emoji. Not a word. No sentence. Not even a sentence fragment. They only reach for me when they fall. I scrolled past it all, letting the screen go dim again. There was a knock at the door. 3 sharp taps. Not frantic. Just familiar. Corbin looked up from the kitchen, already dressed, coffee in hand. Do you want me to? No, I said. I'll get it. I walked slowly, not from fear, but intention. Every step was deliberate, like I needed to feel the floor under me before I faced whoever stood on the other side. When I opened the door, Valora was there. Her hair was pulled back in a haphazard ponytail. No makeup. Eyes red. Face blotchy. She looked younger somehow, less put together, more like the version of her I used to braid hair for when we were little girls. Maddie, she said. I didn't say anything. She took a shaky breath. I didn't mean for it to go that far. Her voice broke a little. You're rich. I'm not. I'm losing everything. There it was. Not regret. Not ownership. Just panic. I leaned against the doorframe, folding my arms across my chest. You didn't mean for it to go that far, I repeated, because you never thought I'd push back. Valora looked away. I just wanted Mom to be proud of me. She already was, I said. She just couldn't do it without tearing someone else down first. She wiped her nose with her sleeve, sniffling. What do I do now? I didn't answer. I didn't know her a roadmap out of her own ruin. She reached for me, a hand hovering midair like a peace offering too late. Maddie. I stepped back, gently. No more, I said. Not this time. The door closed without a slam. Quietly. Gently. Finally. Back inside, I walked to my desk. My laptop blinked awake with a single tap. I opened a new email. No hesitation. No second guessing. Subject, termination of all remaining connections. Body. Please ensure that no business or social association remains active with the following individuals. Valora Sinclair. Judith Sinclair. Thomas Sinclair. Effective immediately. I paused only once, long enough to reread the names. Then I hit send. Corbin appeared beside me, silent at first. He placed a cup of tea next to my elbow. You're sure? He asked softly. I nodded. I'm not doing this to punish them, I said. I'm doing it to heal me. He leaned down, kissed the top of my head, and whispered, that's why it'll work. We didn't speak much after that. We didn't need to. The silence in our home didn't stretch like tension, it settled like peace. By noon, the fallout had begun. My phone lit up again. News alerts. Headlines. Socialite Valora Sinclair loses brand deals following viral incident. Comments flooded in, some supportive, some cruel, most unsurprised. The influencer sponsorships evaporated. PR firms pulled their contracts. A local boutique even posted a statement, "We do not tolerate public humiliation disguised as family banter." Then came the house. Corbin had been paying my parents' mortgage quietly for years. A courtesy. A kindness they never thanked him for. That kindness ended the moment they chose to laugh instead of protect. Foreclosure notices hit their inbox. Property listings followed. They'd have to move. Smaller home. Less prestige. No more parties. Emails they sent to old friends went unanswered. Messages left on group chats got 1 or 2 blue checkmarks, never a reply. It wasn't revenge, I told myself again. It was reality catching up. Late that evening, my phone buzzed again. A voice message. From Valora. I stared at the screen. Just her name and a little waveform bouncing gently, like a heartbeat that didn't belong to me anymore. I didn't listen to it. I didn't have to. I could guess the contents. The plea. The manipulation. The twist of words into guilt. I'd heard it all before. This time, I just held the screen for a moment. Then I tapped delete. Gone. Some apologies come too late. And some stories don't need a reply. The gallery smelled like clean paint and bare wood, that particular scent of new beginnings. My shoes echoed against the concrete as I walked in, alone. The walls were still white, still waiting. But everything inside me felt full. It had been 3 weeks since the night I walked out of my family's story for good. Since the mirror, the coat, the final glass of wine. Since I chose peace, but not silence. I passed the display cases slowly. They were still empty now, but in 2 days, they'd hold something that couldn't be deleted or cropped out. My solo exhibit was titled The Art of Being Erased. Photos lined the center wall, ones I had collected, rescued, or painfully remembered. Birthday parties, holiday dinners, school graduations. And in nearly every one, I was missing. Or hidden in the background. Or cropped out altogether. I'd printed a still frame from the viral video, too, Vallora's hand midrip, my spine bare beneath the torn fabric. I'd mounted it in a black frame and placed it without commentary. Some things didn't need explanation. There were also textures, fabric scraps from the silver dress, a swatch of the blazer Corbin had given me, even the handkerchief Eudora pressed into my hand. It all lived here now, curated like a story no one had dared to tell but me. For the first time, I whispered to the air, I turned my scars into something they couldn't ignore. Corbin entered a few minutes later, carrying a slim box in both hands. He smiled without speaking and placed it gently on the nearest table. I found this in your old folder, he said. It was labeled, Someday. Inside was the sketch of the dress, my dress. The original design Vallora had stolen and paraded as her own. Corbin had commissioned a seamstress to recreate it, not for wearing, but for framing. It stood upright now, delicate and firm, lined in glass. I stared at it for a long time. Not because it was beautiful, though it was, but because I'd almost forgotten I had once created something only for myself. I never wanted to be a masterpiece, I said softly. Just seen. Corbin stepped closer and tucked a loose curl behind my ear. You are. Finally. We didn't say much after that. We didn't need to. He left soon after to handle the catering details, and I stayed behind, adjusting the lighting on each piece. Later, while sorting the guest list near the front desk, a gallery intern handed me an envelope. This came for you, she said. No return address. I opened it carefully, fingers slowing when I saw the contents. Inside was a photo. 2 little girls, one with tangled brown hair and scabbed knees, the other in a tutu and tiara, sitting on a front porch eating popsicles. Me and Vallora. Ages 10 and 4. On the back, in familiar cursive, a single sentence. I remember when we were sisters. I stood there a moment longer than necessary. We were never sisters. We were just roles I outgrew. I folded the photo and placed it in a drawer at the back of the gallery's office. Not out of anger. Just out of understanding. Some keepsakes weren't meant for display. The last piece of the exhibit wasn't visual. It was auditory. At the far wall, a looped short film played softly, only audio, no images. Eudora's voice filled the space like light through stained glass. She'd recorded it years ago, without telling me. Her voice, gentle but clear. Madeline, peace doesn't mean forgetting. It means walking forward while still carrying the truth. Gently. But firmly. The room stayed quiet as the clip repeated. Visitors who previewed the space paused to listen again. Some closed their eyes. Some wept. She saw me, I thought. That's what saved me. When the lights dimmed and the staff began locking up for the night, I took one final walk through the gallery. Not to check for flaws. Just to stand in it, whole. On a bench just outside, I sat for a while. The night had gone still. The streetlights buzzed softly. I pulled the folded handkerchief from my coat pocket, one I had replicated for the gallery, stitched with Eudora's initials, and placed it gently beside me. If this had been a film, the camera would linger here. Not on me. But on that handkerchief. Softly. Quietly. A symbol of the woman I used to be. The one I still carried. The one I finally allowed the world to see. I didn't rewrite the story. I just reclaimed the part they tried to erase. Sometimes, silence isn't weakness, it's power waiting for the right moment. This wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming space I was never given. Have you ever stayed quiet for so long that when you finally spoke, your truth shattered the room? Tell me in the comments, what part of this story hit home for you? And if you want more real stories that cut deep and heal slowly, don't forget to subscribe. The next one might be yours.